Welcome to our channel. Today we will share the story of Collyer Brothers, two brothers who were infamous for their compulsive haunting. It was year 1947. There were strange smells coming from a house in New York. Neighbors didn't know much about the people living there, as they don't go out much and hardly talk to anyone. Two brothers lived in that house. One of them went out every day and brought things, a newspaper, a doll, a tire, different things every day. The other one would stay at home all day. After a while, smells coming from the house became unbearable and neighbors called the police. When the police forces raided the house, they forced the door open but found out there was a huge wall in front of them. After this sight, they called for reinforcement team. There was a horrifying scene. But before hearing the rest of the story, let us tell you about the Collyer Brothers. We'll guide you through the unfolding events. A parking lot on 5th Avenue in a place called Collyer Brothers Park in Harlem, in the heart of New York. This park that is among hundreds of parks in New York is where Collyer Brothers used to live. Homer Collyer was born in 1881 and his brother Langley was born 4 years later in New York City. Their father was a gynecologist and their mother Susie was a housewife who descended from Robert Livingston, a former opera singer. Dr. Herman Collyer and his wife moved into the house after getting married. Dr. Collyer was a man of very strange behavior. His work took him to the city hospital on Roosevelt Island. He bought himself a canoe for visiting an island. 4 days per week, he would get in the canoe and go to the island. Then he would take the canoe in his hand and walk back home. His neighbors thought it was strange that he walked for hours with the canoe and used to make fun of him. Dr. Collyer would invite his neighbors to the hospital where he worked and tried to talk to everyone he saw on the streets. Dr. Collyer and his wife Susie divorced in 1909. Herman moved to a new house and Susie stayed in the same house with their sons. Dr. Herman died in 1923. Both Collyer brothers were single and continued to live in the same house with their mother. The three adults lived a normal life until 1929 when Susan passed away, causing much trauma and suffering for her sons. For the next 4 years, both brothers led a social life, going to church, taking a vacation, and hardly ever coming home. Although Langley was an engineer, he spent most of his time doing music. He was a professional pianist. He was successful in his profession. People used to say that he had a talent endowed by the Livingston genes. In 1933, a tragedy befell the family as Homer lost his sight due to a hemorrhage in his eyes. There was no one to take care of Homer. Langley knew that he couldn't afford hiring a nurse for his brother. He had to make a decision to choose between his brother and his career. Langley chose his brother. Quit his job and made plans to live on the money left by his mother. After a while, he took part-time jobs, but the course of events would take him to a completely different place. The Collyer brothers gradually withdrew from society. They started living in their own world in their home. The two brothers who used to go out every day were now going out only once a week. Many African American families moved into the neighborhood where the Collyer brothers lived. While they were inside the house, those outside were gossiping about them. People thought that they were living a luxurious life inside the house, that they were very rich. While the Collyer brothers were in the house, some young people started throwing stones at the house. The stones pierced through the windows, frightening the two brothers so much that they closed the windows completely after these incidents. They were now trapped in total darkness, which took a toll on the two brothers' mental health, slowly driving them insane. Langley spent most of his time inventing. He invented an electric device that could sweep the inside of pianos, a heater for food, and an automatic door closer. The strangest thing he did was to set booby traps inside the house, presumably because he was frightened by the stones thrown at the house and fought to set traps. He walked for miles and miles without stopping, visiting butcher, the stores, going through the garbage dump. He had memorized the garbage containers in the city. Langley started bringing home every item he found. Langley usually left the house at midnight and went all over the city. He took whatever he could get his hands on and bring it home. After a while, the house became a maze of boxes made of garbage. The house was full of intricate tunnels made of garbage. Langley didn't pay any bills. There was no water, no gas, no electricity. Their only connection to the outside world was a radio, and the house had a kerosene heater. The most dramatic part of the story was Langley's reason for collecting newspapers. Langley collected newspapers so he could help his brother Homer. He read every story in the papers because he hoped to find a story about Homer's cure, and then he came up with a cure of his own. He fed his brother Homer 100 oranges, black bread, and peanut butter a week, all of which he collected from the dumpster he went to at night. As time passed, Langley and his brother Homer's condition worsened. After a certain period of time, Homer became paralyzed. Langley did not hospitalize him, refused to let him undergo a medical treatment, and wanted to take care of his brother by himself. Langley told reporters asking him why he didn't hospitalize his brother. "I am the son of a doctor. I have the necessary knowledge. I can treat my brother myself." According to a report in the New York Times, the officials who came to change the gas meter of the Collyer Brothers had to break into the house. People who were curious about the inside of the house gathered around the house to watch this event. Hundreds of people waited for half an hour to witness these moments. It was 1947. People had started complaining about bad smells coming from the house. One of them reported the situation to the police. When reinforcements arrived, they started the operation to enter the house. Upon entering the house, they found thousands of newspapers. It was almost impossible to walk inside. There were chairs, shoes, newspapers, and pieces of iron everywhere. After 5 hours of work, a window in the house could be opened. One of the policemen took out a pile of scrap from the house and found Holmes underneath. Holmes was surrounded by newspapers, and next to him were piles of junk reaching up to the ceiling. This was presumably a living space specially built for Homer by Langley. Homer died of starvation. After seeing this, the teams presumed that Langley had fled. They first searched for him in the immediate neighborhood. Langley was actually very close. The jawbone of a horse, baby carriages, dozens of guns, more than 25,000 books, human organs in jars, cats, 14 pianos, and countless newspapers and magazines were in the house. As crews cleaned the inside of the house, more than 2,000 people were said to be outside, and people were coming to the house every day to witness the event live. It took them 2 weeks to find Langley, who was only 10 meters away from his brother Homer, and whatever pile of stuff they had. Langley had built tunnels into the house, through which he went to his brother and fed him every day. Langley probably died first, then Homer. Langley's death was tragic. Langley was killed by one of the booby traps he had set in the house. Langley had triggered the booby trap and was crushed under an enormous load of newspapers and metal boxes. Their house remained a vacant lot until 1965, when it became one of New York's first small parks. Americans have not forgotten this event, and with time, a phrase that has become a household word emerged. Mothers would say to their children who didn't tidy their rooms, "Your room looks just like the Collyer Brothers."